Preview, slideshow, use primary monitor. There we go. Sorry, I've got to sit here in a conference room at my customer's office. So, all right, can you see my Power BI for Analytics screen here, Liz?
Yep, you're good to go.
Alrighty. So, first of all, thank you everybody for joining us here. We're gonna talk through some Power BI stuff today. I'm gonna try to give you a look at basically the whole Power BI stack that we have here, everything from pulling data in with Power Query all the way through doing a little bit of data modeling with Power Pivot, and then we'll also show you a little bit of reporting functionality with PowerView, and hopefully even have a little bit of time to show you some Power Math. So if it has Power in the name of it, we're going to cover most of it. We're even using Power for our presentation. The only thing we're pretty much not going to cover today is, never mind, performance point I was thinking of, but there's no Power in that. So I think we're touching all the Power stuff today.
Hey, Brad.
I'm going to, yeah?
Your voice is cutting out just a little bit. I don't know if there's anything you can do about that.
I'm not so sure there is.
Okay. Well, we'll just go with it.
All right. Do you want to record this over on my side just in case?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. Go ahead and start the recording. Alrighty. So before we get going here, just give you guys a little bit of information about me. I'm a consultant and trainer at Pragmatic Works. I live in Jacksonville, Florida. I do a lot of webinars here for Pragmatic Works. I do lots of training events for it as well. So I do like a lot of our workshops and the boot camps and those type of things. You guys are going to be out at Mass Summit this year. I'll be up at Summit in Seattle coming up here next month. So I'll be doing a couple of APS sessions there. I'll be doing one APS session and then also one session on Azure VMs. So if you guys have to be out at Summit, shoot me an email or hit me up on Twitter and we'll get together one night. I'll be out there for the whole week. So, but yeah, I do a lot of speaking. I do a little bit of blogging in there. I'm kind of a slacker on that at this point in my life. But every now and then I do post something online for that. So if you guys have any questions, be sure to write down my Twitter account there as well as my email. You can find me on LinkedIn there too. But if you have any questions, follow up, or anything like that after this webinar, feel free to shoot me a message there, and I'd be more than happy to reply to you guys there one-on-one. Okay. So we'll try to do a couple of questions at the end. Usually I'm pretty long-winded, so I usually go right to the end. So we'll see how we end up on time there. Okay, so before we get going into actually showing you some of these tools, I have a couple of things I just go over. So first of all, we'll walk through basically why we need to do business intelligence, because ultimately all the Power BI stack is really built around your organization enabling customers to do self-service BI. So ultimately, business intelligence is all about getting visibility into the data that drives your company. So you're not just making decisions based on your gut feeling. You're making decisions that are backed by data and actually have some fallback on when somebody asks you, well, why did you make the decision to close store A and not store B? You can go to them and say, well, sales have been trending down, the profit margin has been pretty low, not just, well, I didn't like the street that the store was on, or something along those lines. So it gives us much better visibility into the data inside of our business there that runs our companies. Another thing that business intelligence will really help us do is look at things historically. So let's go back to our little retail example there and say that we want to replace one of the store managers. So let's say that we're trying to get rid of the store manager, we want to fire them, replace them with somebody else we don't think they're doing a good job. Well, what we can do is we can track the sales on that store, and by doing some business intelligence and building warehouses and that kind of thing, we can take a look and see what sales were like for a particular location under manager A versus what the sales were under manager B. That way, a year from now, we know it was a good idea for me to fire Devin Knight and replace Devin Knight with me as the manager of our particular store. We can track historical data and look at trend over time. Ultimately, we can also do a little predictive analytics. So, I did a little bit of work for a company where we basically said if we were to close one of the ports, what would that do to the allocation of the chips that go into a particular port? So if I We can apply that same thing to a lot of different lines of business. If I've got a particular hospital and I want to build a new wing, how many beds am I going to need to build into that new wing, and how many of those beds are going to be filled the first 6 months versus the first year, those type of things. If there's a hurricane coming, we can take a look and see, well, where do we need to deploy Red Cross people ahead of time so that they can quickly respond based on rainfall, elevation in certain cities, and those type of things. We can do a little bit of analysis there, do a little bit of predictive analysis as well. And ultimately, as we all know, that none of our data is ever stored in just one single location. It's kind of spread out across multiple databases or multiple systems inside of a business. So what we'd want to be able to do is combine that data easily. And what Power Pivot and Power Query are going to do is allow us to pull data from multiple locations and really map those locations up and put them in there together. Okay. So there's really kind of 3 levels of business intelligence that we talk about. We're going to be focused on the self-service BI piece of it today, the Power BI stack. So that's going to be, somebody is on their, like I'm going to show you today, building some of these things out in Excel and doing a little bit of work in Excel, and they put it, email it over to somebody and show it to somebody else. But for the most part, it's kind of self-contained inside of our workstation. When we start talking about the team BI, that's when we start to use things like PowerBI.com or maybe a SharePoint site. So we can take those individual Excel workbooks and we can push them into something that's a little more managed by IT. It has a little bit more accountability behind it because somebody can build approval processes, and we can standardize our data sets we use through PowerBI.com and the data steward functionalities that are built to there. And it really becomes a little bit more, like I said, managed by the company rather than kind of a one-off sort of a report in that self-service kind of a world. And then finally, when we start talking about corporate BI, that's when we start talking about things like your enterprise data warehouses that you have, or your analysis services cubes that you're going to build rather than just building Power Pivot reports that store hundreds of gigs or terabytes of data potentially inside of those. So they're larger-term projects. They're driving those type of efforts. There's a lot of corporate governance behind them and a lot of corporate standards that really go into building those. So again, we're going to focus on that self-service BI, but there is kind of a migration process that you can go through that we're not going to have time to cover today. But a lot of these corporate BI projects kind of start these little self-service BI projects. So there's a little bit of a path for you to be able to go from self-service all the way through to enterprise BI type of a thing. Okay, so again, here's all the tools that we're going to talk through today. Power Query is what we're going to use to pull the data out of some places. You can pull data from a lot of different locations. I'm actually going to mainly use some data from the internet today. We're going to take that data from the internet using Power Query or from your database locally, and then we're going to move that data into Power Pivot, where we're going to then model the data. So we're going to take the data, we're going to put some relationships in. I'll show you guys how to do some of that kind of stuff. We're going to create hierarchies to make the data a little bit more usable, so users don't have to drag over year, then quarter, month, and day. We're going to go ahead and build that hierarchy in there for them, make it a little bit easier for you to navigate some of that data. Okay. We can also build performance indicators inside there, and then ultimately we're going to do some reporting on that data. So Power Pivot is kind of the little brother of the analysis services multidimensional and analysis services tabular world. It's actually kind of a small in-memory or inside version of analysis services tabular. Okay. Ultimately, we can take those queries, like I said, we can publish those Power Queries out to Power BI sites for data refresh. We can also move them out to Power BI and again have those used as corporate standards and have multiple people connect to them. Those Power Pivot workbooks, ultimately we're going to connect them to a series of data. If we want to do some automatic refresh on those, that's where we're going to bring in things like SharePoint, and we're also going to be able to obviously allow that data to be used by more than one person. So in Power Pivot on your desktop, it's kind of limited just to you. When we move over to SharePoint, it's a little bit more scaled out type of an implementation there for you. Ultimately, we need to do some type of reporting. So it's not good enough for us to just grab all this data and hopefully get some information out of it. The way that we're going to get information out of it is to do reporting of some type. And the new reporting technology that was introduced a couple years ago with School 2012, something called PowerView. So I'll show you guys how to create some PowerView reports today. It's super easy. It's all drag and drop kind of user interface at this point, no code. whatsoever. So it's so easy, even a sales guy can do it. So you know, our sales team uses this to do visualizations, and they're not necessarily SQL coders or anything like that. You don't have to write any MDX or anything, do any reporting there. It's all very drag and drop. Okay. The other thing, again, hopefully I'll be able to show you guys this one too, is going to be our map. Some really cool 3D mapping capabilities there. We can do some animated videos and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, the new PowerBI.com and cool Power BI and stuff. So it's basically, we take all these reports, publish them out to the web, and you basically have all your data anytime, no matter where you're at. There's apps for iOS, there's apps for Android, where you can go and access all this data very, very easily. So there's a lot of different pieces here, the whole Power BI stack, that kind of fit together. So we're going to try to walk you through a little bit of a journey through this whole slide here, and hopefully make it a little bit more streamlined than what it looks like here. So lots of options. Just need a little bit of guidance on how to navigate through some of that stuff. Okay. So our self-service BI cycle, obviously we're going to pull the data from some place. That's going to be Power Query. We're going to do things with the data to associate all different data sets and everything. That's going to be your data modeling inside of Power Pivot. And your data presentation, that's going to be in either an Excel pivot table or a PowerView or potentially Power Maps, one of the tools there. So as far as the data extraction level goes, we have two tools there, Power Pivot and Power Query. Power Pivot is going to pull from a variety of locations, so it'll pull from most any of your relational databases, so SQL Server, Oracle, Teradata, any of the cloud services as well from Microsoft. So if you have any of your data in Azure, you can pull from there. Flat files, reporting services reports. We can pull from a lot of different places on-prem as well as in the cloud there. Power Query is basically going to take all those different sources, all your databases, your flat files, everything, and extend with another list of sources that we can pull from. So we can pull from SharePoint list. As you'll see today, we're going to take a couple of websites and we're just going to scrape some data off the internet. So it's really, really efficient for pulling data off web, so you can supplement your internal data with some external data there as well. Active Directory, Facebook, your social media connectors there as well, and support connecting to your Hadoop cluster, whether that's local on-prem or whether that's in the cloud through one of the cloud providers there as well. This is by no means a complete list of all different sources that you can connect to, but it kind of just shows you the versatility of the tool there and all the different things that we can connect to. Okay. Next thing, once we get all the data pulled in, we're going to do data modeling, and that's going to be inside of Power Pivot. We've kind of already talked through this one a little bit here. We're going to build those relationships to tell the model how each one of our tables are related, build those hierarchies in, any calculations. So if we want to do like averages year over year, that kind of stuff, we can also build key performance indicators in there, or KPIs. Finally, we're going to have to build some sort of data presentation. So we need to make sense of this data. The most common query tool that you're going to find here, the most common presentation tool that you're going to find in any organization is going to be Excel. And what you'll notice throughout this whole experience today is that we're going to live right inside Excel for the entire time. So it's a user interface that all your users probably are familiar with. The languages that we're going to use very closely, in some cases, mimic the Excel query language there. So it's something Microsoft has done a lot of work with to make users feel right at home there and really make it pretty intuitive for everybody. So once we get done doing all this stuff, again, all inside of Excel, we're going to stick inside of Excel. We're going to build some sort of a pivot table, pivot chart, something along those lines. PowerView, we've got a couple mapping options there, so we can build some 3D or build some interactive maps inside of PowerView that are all from Bing Map. We can also do your standard charts and graphs, pie charts, bar charts, type of things in your standard tables. The cool thing about PowerView is it also gives you the ability to export your reports out to PowerPoint. So all the interactions we'll do inside of the PowerView report there, once we export these out to PowerPoint presentation, you can still interact with them. It's still live data and everything. So it's a little bit of an interesting way to be able to go into meetings and interact with your data right inside of the PowerPoint presentation rather than having static data inside of your PowerPoint presentation for your meetings. So it makes things a little bit more fun. And then finally, Power Map, again, we'll build some mapping functionality in there. All right, so before we hop into the tools, only a couple more slides here and then we'll promise we'll do some demo time here. On the Power Query side, just a couple of things maybe as a heads up here. How are you actually going to access Power Query? So I made a comment just a minute ago that Microsoft has done a lot of work to keep all the stuff right inside the Excel environment. So if you're using Excel 2010 or later, then you can get Power Query. There's also a new desktop version of the whole Power BI suite, Power BI Desktop. So Power Query, again, just an add-in for Excel. There's updates quite frequently to the tool, so they're pushing out updates really to Power Query and mainly to the Power BI Designer. They're really on a monthly basis. So there's a lot of updates coming to that product. They've done a really good job of keeping that up to date, bringing new features quite a bit. And ultimately, Power Query is kind of like the self-service ETL tool. So as you'll see when we go in here, we can combine some data sets together. We can do some data manipulation and do a couple other cool things inside of Power Query there. And so ways that you're probably familiar with bringing in data. One of them is just going to that data tab. That's where you normally connect to your analysis services cubes and build your pivot tables and all that kind of stuff. And then if you ever use Power Pivot, you can go to the Power Pivot tab and do manage. Well, Power Query has its own tab inside of Excel that we're going to use in order to bring in data. So the next thing we'll take a look at here is importing the data. So ultimately, we need to do a little bit of work here. So we're going to go find data samples and bring it into our model. We're going to use Power Query to do that. So again, you've already seen some of this here. This is a list of all the data source options that we have. We can bring in from web pages, from any flat file sources, all the Microsoft Azure offerings there. You'll see a whole host of database options and then a bunch of other sources. So, a common one, I just like to put a couple of these out around the other sources. Salesforce is a big one, SAP Business Objects, and Dynamics CRM. Those are usually the three that people care a lot about where they're on that other sources section. Just keep in mind on the database side there, you do have to have drivers for all these things. So if you're going to pull data in from Oracle, you have to have the Oracle drivers on your machine there. Okay. Ultimately, we then need to do something with that data. So again, we're going to use a query language here called M. M is the markup language for Power Query. That's how we're going to do the manipulation. So that's where our self-service ETL kind of a tool comes into play there. You'll see another tool that we're going to use in Power Pivot. You'll see another language called DAX. So they're a little bit different from each other, and doesn't really match up with anything that you're used to seeing probably, but it's cool for all those data transformations. If we need to do any kind of data cleanup or anything like that, we're only going to write M in the background. So you don't have to know M in order to do some really awesome stuff inside of in the Power Query. There is a UI that you'll see, and it will actually generate all the M in the background for you. So a couple of places to write in. The only thing I really point out on this slide here, down on the bottom left there, just note that it is case sensitive. So if you're ever going in and modifying the queries that are written in the tool for you, just know that those are case sensitive whenever you make any modifications to this. Okay, so let's actually hop into the tool here. So I mentioned to Liz as we were getting started here, I'm going to probably do something that I couldn't do and try to do this all in 2016. So this is a little bit different between Excel 2016, Excel 2013, and 2010. Let me actually pull up. I do have a Hyper-V image running here that has the other version of Excel on it. So I'll pull that just to show you guys a couple of the differences between the two as we're going through here. Okay, so I'm going to create a new workbook. And then here inside the Excel environment, you'll notice a couple of things. So I'm again inside of 2016. And what you'll see is up here in the top corner, I've actually got this little Power Pivot tab. So that's where we're going to do all of our Power Pivot, all of our data modeling, all of this type of thing. I'm going to hop over here real quick and show you the 2010 environment, or excuse me, the 2013 environment. This is the same in 2010. And what you'll notice is actually, let me do something here real quick. Duplicate my display here. There we go. So what you'll notice up here at the top is I actually have a Power Query as well as a Power Pivot tab. Okay, so in the 2010, 2013 environments, I get two tabs there as opposed to just the one. If you don't see these tabs in your environment, all you have to do is click over here on File, and then go to Options, We're going to go to the add-ins. We're going to switch down here at the bottom. Instead of Excel add-ins, we want the COM add-ins. Okay? So we want to pull up the COM add-ins, and you'll notice we have a couple different options on the screen here. We've got one for Power Pivot, one for Power Map, one for Power Query, and then also for PowerView down. Okay, so if you don't see the Power Pivot tab in your 2013 environment, or if you don't see the Power Query tab in your 2013 environment, just come into the COM add-ins and make sure that those are enabled here. Okay. So again, I've got this here as a back for us in case we need to come over to it, but I'm going to show you some of the new stuff. Excel 2016 is releasing here pretty soon, so I want to show you a couple of the things. Actually, all the functionality that we're going to show you here is all the same between all the versions, 2010, 2013, 2016. Some of the options are just a little bit different location here. Okay. So again, Power Pivot tab. Notice here in 2016 I don't have a Power Query tab. Power Query has been relocated here into Data tab, and you'll notice we have this Get and Transform section. This is all of our Power Query functionality here. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some data across a couple of different sources here today. So I'm not going to pull any data in from like a SQL Server database or anything like that. There's certainly options in. If we go to new queries from database, and there's all your database options, and from Azure and all your Azure options there. From other data sources, get you all the other stuff, like your Facebook and your Salesforce, those type of things there. What we're actually going to do is I'm actually going to pull in some data here from the web. So again, we could pull in data from a SQL Server database or from a reporting services report, from a variety of locations. But just to show you guys something a little bit different, I'm going to show you how to pull in some data from the web. So we can do the same thing if you want to pull it from the web or from any other source and kind of combine it up with your existing data inside of your environment as well. Okay. So what I'm going to do is we're going to look at three sets of data here. We're going to look at rainfall. We're going to look at number of sunny days, and ultimately we're going to see if we can do some visualizations to try to determine if the size of your state, like land-wise, has any effect on the average rainfall inside of your state. So everybody, those of you who have been up to Seattle or know anybody that lives in Seattle, they always talk about how it's always raining up there. So we're going to test that today and see if Seattle actually is, or Washington State in general really, is the rainiest place in the country. So what we're going to do here first of all is I'm going to Google average rainfall in the United States. And I already know down here, this is the one I want. These pretty much have the same, essentially the same data on them, but I'm going to pull this one down here, so the annual rainfall for the United States. If we come here, you'll notice that it's not really, I don't have like a text file or a CSV or anything like that here on the screen. What I ultimately have is just a normal web page that you would see anywhere else. So if you were to go to any other website in the world, then Wikipedia, or whether you're pulling in sports data, you go to MLB.com or NFL.com. Not really a useful place for you to pull data, because normally we have to copy this all out. We'd have to paste it into a text file or into Excel and then import it to all that kind of stuff. Power Query is going to do some really cool things for us. I'm going to copy that URL there. I'll hop over here into Power Query, and I'm going to say that I want to pull this data from the web, and I'm just going to paste the URL right here into my From Web option. What it's going to do is Power Query is going to go out, it's going to scrape that website, and you'll see here on the left-hand side I've got a couple of different data sets that it's going to allow me to choose from. What I can do is I can click on any of these data sets, and it'll actually give me a little preview of the data set over here on the right. So if we flip back over, this looks remarkably similar to the little table that we have here. So Power Query's gone out, it's analyzed that web page a little bit, and it's found all the data on there that it thinks is inside of a table. If we look at document, it's really just the metadata for that particular page. Okay. So again, we can do this with a variety of locations, not just plain text little websites like this. You can pull it from a lot of cool different places. Okay. So I'll click on this edit. I also have this load option down here. I'll kind of show you this load option in the next one. But ultimately, this is the data we want. So I'll click edit and show you guys how to do a little bit of manipulation of this data here. Okay. So this is going to launch us into our Power Query screen. And the first thing that we want to do is over here on the right side, we have this properties option for name. It named this one pretty well, but I'm just going to rename this one rainfall. And the reason I'm going to rename this is if for no other reason, make sure that the first thing you always do is come in here and rename this. Because generally, if we were to just go in here and create a new query, it's going to name this thing like Power Query, or it's going to name it Query 1, Query 2. It's not really going to be useful for us. And you're going to get down the road someplace, and you're going to start manipulating the data, and you're going to figure out that you forgot to rename it, and then you're going to have references to the wrong query name, and then you're going to go make changes to a bunch of stuff. Just get in the habit, first things first, always get in the habit of coming here and making a modification to that little name option there. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is the only thing I really care about in here is going to be the rainfall inches per year. So I'm going to click and select all these other columns here. And I'm just going to right-click on the top. I'm going to say Remove Columns. Okay. So the only one I care about is the amount of rainfall that I have in here per year. So what you can see here on this right-hand side is apply steps. I actually get all different steps that are happening. You'll see those all show up right here on the right-hand side. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to rename this. Actually, you'll see I've got a little bit of a data quality issue here. So I've got state and rainfall. I think my first row has the first row has my column headers in it, but it will also pick up the first row as column headers there too. So what I'm going to do to get rid of this first row of data here is I'm going to say use first row as headers, and watch what happens. This state line here is going to go away, and it's going to be moved up into the header section there. Again, over here on the side, you can see the next step that it put in there was promoted headers. Okay, so each one of these steps over here on the right-hand side, what's happening as I'm making all these changes. If you want to see what's actually going on in the background here, we can click on this little advanced editor. You'll see here is the M query language that we have in the background. So all those steps that we've done, you'll see that they each created different M steps here in the background. So we changed the type, so it did a little bit of manual work there on its own. We removed those couple of columns. You'll see that was the area, rainfall, and rainfall columns there. And then we promoted that first row into the header section. Okay. We can come in here and we can actually see the queries that's running in the background, and we can actually modify these here as well if we wanted to. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to rename this column here. I'm just going to right-click and do rename, and I'm just going to call this one rainfall. So I don't want all the ridiculous parentheses and all that stuff in there. Okay. And the last thing I'm going to do, you'll notice that the data, much like in Excel, my text values are going to be left aligned. And so since this is left aligned here, note this is a text value, I can also click over here on my ribbon, and you'll see the data type up here at the top. So if I need to change this data type for any reason, I can click that drop down and I can say that I want this to be a decimal number instead. So there you'll see it right aligns that data, indicating that's a numeric value, and it adds a step over here for change type. Okay. So the last thing I'll show you guys here inside of this little applied steps screen is as I hover over these, you know I get this little X here. What that's going to allow me to do is I can actually come back and I can remove individual steps. So I decided, well, I actually did want some of those columns. I made a mistake and I wanted one column that I deleted. I can actually come over here and I can click the little X. It's going to give a little warning message saying that, hey, you're about to delete this and I'm going to break other things that you've done. And then after I say, okay, in this particular case, I didn't really reference any of those columns or anything. I can add those columns all back in here very easily, but you'll see it kept all those other steps that I did in the interim there. Okay, so it's a cool little feature there. We can come in here and delete individual steps if we don't, if we decide that we didn't want to really remove those data points or something like that. Okay, so I'm going to take those back out again. I'll show you one other way to delete columns here. So I'm going to select the two columns that I want to keep this time, and say remove other columns. Okay, so you can either remove the individual columns that we select, or we can remove the column that we didn't have selected. So a couple of little options there for us. All right. So I think we're good to go on this data set here. So I'm going to click this close and load. I'm actually going to do the drop down. If I were to do close and load, what would happen is the data will actually load right into an Excel sheet. It's not going to come up there because it's in a Power Query window, but it would load all the data right into an Excel sheet here in the background, and it would still store the query and everything for me. I don't really need to load this data into Excel. I do need the data here a little bit later when we start to actually do some modeling inside PowerView. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close and load to instead. That's going to give me a couple options here. And I say I don't want to create a table inside my Excel sheet, which is what the table option does. I want to only create a connection, and I want to add this to my data model. what that's going to do is it's going to put the data here inside, build the query right here inside of Power Query, but it's also going to automatically add that data into my Power Pivot model for me. So there's my rainfall data inside Power Pivot there. Okay, so when I say close and load to, and I tell it load it to the data model, but only create the connection, it's not going to import any data into Excel. It's going to create the query here, and then it's going to load the data directly into my Power Pivot model. Okay, so we'll come back to that data here in just a little bit. The next thing I want to do is have our rainfall data. The next thing we want to do is pull in the average sunny days. So I'm going to say average sunny days United States. Okay, in this particular one, I want this second link here. So we'll note that this page is a little different. So obviously, still just a text data page here. But you'll notice I actually have two different data sets instead of here that list all of my data. So I have to go to two different places here, really, to get my data. So just keep that in mind as we copy this URL. We're kind of going to go through. Oops, sorry about that. Hit the right link here. Go to our data tab, say new from other sources from the web again. Again, I'm going to paste that URL in here, and I'm going to click OK. It's going to scrape the web page. It's going to give me a list of all the data tables. So prior to this, in the last one, you saw that we had two objects that came up inside of our navigator. One was the data table. The other one was just the document that had all the metadata for that particular web page. This time, you'll notice there are A through M, A through Missouri, and this other table here is Montana through Wyoming. Okay, so we have two tables inside of there. Again, we have the individual document metadata there for that one. So this time, I'm going to do a little bit of a shortcut. Rather than having to put this URL in here twice and scrape these two locations separately, I'm going to hit this little select items option, and I'm going to check off both of these. Okay, so I know I want to import both sets of data, so I'm just going to go ahead and check those off there. And again, I'm going to click the edit button here to hop into Power Query. And ultimately, so we don't have two data sets inside here, but ultimately we want to combine these two into one single data set that lists all of our annual sunny days. Okay, so I'm going to do a couple of steps here. First thing I'm going to do, of course, I'm going to rename this. I'm going to call this one Sunny Days. And I'm going to remove a couple of columns here. I don't care about where the measurement is taken or the percent of days or the total hours. I only ultimately care about the actual number of sunny days that we had. Okay? I'm going to come over here to my table 1, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to call this one Sunny Days 2. I'm going to remove those extra columns. And so now my data is essentially, it's the same data in both of these here. I need to combine these two data sets. I've got Montana through Wyoming here. Again, I've got the other 25 states here with Alabama through Missouri. Okay, so I've got those two separate queries. What I want to do here is I want to use this option over here called Append Queries. So I'm just going to click Append Queries. And what this is going to do is it's going to give me an option and say, what other data do I want to add to this? So right now, I've got my first 25 states. I want to take those other 25 states, Sunny Days 2. Click OK. Now you'll notice in here, down at the bottom, you see I have 50 rows of data, and that's all my U.S. states there. Okay, so I'm going to rename this one to Sunny Days. And I think we're good to go here. All right. So I'm going to do, again, close, and actually close one more thing. I'm going to skip a couple of steps here just for time's sake. So one thing I do want to do inside of here is I want to combine the sunny days with my rainy days data here. So I have 50 records inside of both of these. Each list, all the states, and so the same key column for the state, but I want these data columns to both be in the same table. Okay, so just like we did the append queries to add the data to each other, we can use this merge queries option here, and I can tell it if I merge these queries together and pick the other data set that I want to use. I'm going to say sunny days, and then we basically tell here how do we join these two data sets together. So I'm just going to click on the state column and click on the date column. You'll notice here at the bottom it says that I've matched 50 out of 50 rows. So by default, it's going to do a left join here. So I had, 50 states plus the territories, so maybe we have 50 states plus Puerto Rico inside of here. It would say that it matched 50 out of 51 rows down here at the bottom. If we only wanted to do an inner join functionality there, so I'm going to take the matching rows, we can check this box here, but at this point, because we only have 50 rows of these, it's not really going to make any difference to us here. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that as it is. We're going to say OK, and watch what it does here. It adds a new column. You'll notice that it doesn't actually give us any data inside of this particular column. You notice it has these two little arrows that go the opposite directions here. And that we have a table, essentially stored the sunny days table inside of each one of these rows here. So we're going to click this little box here and tell which data from sunny days data set do I want to pull in. Ultimately, I only care about the sunny days column inside there. The state column is going to be the same thing as what we already have here because those are join criteria. And I'm going to take this box here off, use original column name as prefix. Basically, all this would do, as you see here, it said sunny days. If I check that box still, it would have the data name plus the column name inside of here. So this would have ended up being sunnydays.sunnydays in the end. So I'm going to go ahead and do close and load again because now we're done with that one. You'll notice that my rainfall there is refreshing. And when we get that one just a second here, it will pull in all the data for our rainfall. It will pull in all the data for sunny days, pull in all the data for sunny days too, and combine those queries all together using our append and then also our merge function that we just implemented inside there. Okay, so we'll give that here just a second. I'll show you what that actually did to our PowerView model here in the background as well. And also, while that's running, I have one film data set I'm going to bring in for us and average land size by state. And here I want the second link. And we'll take it. So I'm going to go ahead and import this last data set here real quick just so that we have the data available to us as we go through here. And this is taking a sweet time to load data. This next section is what we call stalling while the internet does its magic. So real quick, loading, I'll show you guys kind of the same places where we would do this here instead of the 2013, 2010 environments. Again, I have the Power Query tab. You'll notice all those data source options up here on the top, so from the web, from the different file formats, each of our database options. We do see some of these options here already on this tab. So just a little different layout. Ultimately, though, again, same kind of functionality. When we actually launch into, let me do other sources here and just launch a blank Power Query window, see that the Power Query window itself is essentially the same as what we saw inside the 2016 environment there. So it's a little different way to get to the tool, but ultimately the same options and everything. You see our merge and append are still there at the top. Use for those headers, all that kind of stuff there as well. Got that data there, and apparently I clicked load it to the Excel sheet here and not just to Power Pivot, so we'll deal with that here in just a minute. But I'm going to go ahead and bring this last data here real quick for us while we are waiting for the rest of that to go. Okay, so now I'm bringing in my land mass, essentially the total area of each one of the states. I'm going to say edit here again, and I'm going to zoom through this one here again. We've kind of already seen all of the stuff. I'm going to remove my columns. I'm going to rename this one to miles. All right, the data type is correct there. I have 51 rows you'll notice inside of here. So I'm going to drop down here. I think, if I remember correctly, there was a total. There we go, total for the U.S. All right, and I'm going to call this one land area. And I'm going to do close and load to. Again, putting this to my data model and creating the connection only. And then I'll come over here to Power Pivot just to show you guys what's going on inside of here. So there's that rainfall that we had. I'm just going to do an update here. So these are our two columns that we've added together. It's our land area that has all of our land mass, basically the size of each one of the states there as well. Okay, so that's a little bit of Power Query for you guys. Next thing we're going to talk about is how to actually make sense of this data. So we have these two different data sets here. One of them has the land area. The other one has all of our rainfall and sunny days data. So we'll talk about how we can use Power Pivots now to combine those data sets. So again, data sets where we come from doesn't matter here in this case. ultimately, we can bring that data in from the web and from a local source inside your SQL server. We can bring it all from a local data source or the SQL Server or Oracle. A bunch of locations where we can bring it in with manipulate all that data with Power Query. As you saw, put it in a little bit more usable format for us. And then now inside of Power Pivot, we're going to tell us how we want to actually associate those data sets and actually extend the data sets a little bit more here. So real couple of things here. The Power Pivot is like your self-service data modeling tool. So rather than having to spin up a version of SQL Server and do a bunch of work creating tables and everything, we can pull that data obviously through Power Query and put it right into an easy, relatable format inside of Power Pivot. Okay. Again, it's all built in right here into Excel. So it's a simple, familiar interface. There's tens of millions of Excel users out there. Everybody's already going to be pretty familiar. You'll see as we hop into Power Pivot that things look very, very similar to what they look like inside of Excel. The way we're going to extend these models is to use something called DAX, the Data Analysis Expression Language. So we had M whenever we were pulling in data with Power Query, and then we have DAX as we go over here and we try to manipulate some of this data inside of Power Pivot. Okay? And ultimately, we want to take all those sources and kind of mash them together. So we want to integrate those different data sources together. In this case, there are 3 different websites that we used. Again, it could be a combination of websites and on-prem data or just on-prem data. It could be a variety of things there. We want to create relationships, so obviously we need to tell Power Pivot how the data is related. It doesn't know that these 2 data sets are related just on the state level or on that state column. We have to tell it how to do that. And ultimately, we want to be able to create hierarchies in there as well. So right now, I've only got state data. Again, if I had product, category, product subcategory, we could create user hierarchies out of that as well. Okay. One thing I'm going to show you guys real quick is just how to add extra columns. So how we can actually use DAX. So we can add additional columns into our model. So even though the data doesn't exist, I'm going to show you how to group the different states by their size, by square mileage. So we're going to group them into small, medium, and large states. Okay? So I'll show you how to do that with the DAX language there. And also we're going to use DAX to create a couple of measures. So we can do things like year-over-year calculations, or we can say that if we want to do the average size of the state, or maybe the average rainfall if we had multiple records for each of the states, those type of things. Okay? So hop here into the actual Power Pivot side. And what I want to do first of all is I'm going to come over here into the bottom right, and I'm going to look at this diagram view. And inside the diagram, I'm going to just I need to relate these tables in some way. Because if I were to try to slice this data over here by the square mileage for the states, it would tell me, hey, there's no relationship between those. I don't know how to relate the rainfall data to the square mileage for a particular state. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag and drop from state to state, and that's going to create a relationship here for us. Okay? So that's basically telling us that my state data over here is related to the state data inside this rainfall table. So just to show you guys what that does for, I'm going to go ahead and pivot table in here onto a new worksheet. And now what I can do is I can take this rainfall data, and I can say that I want the number of sunny days, and I want to slice it by the state from this table over here. So even though states in the rainfall table and states over here in the land table, because I related those two in that same column, it knows the relationship between those. So I can even take the mileage and say, well, I want to see the rainfall for the states that are less than 1,000 square miles, whatever that number there happens to be. But the data is not exactly useful for us. We don't have any real groupings or anything like that. So that's what we want to use DAX to create. So we want to be able to say, well, a small state is anything under 55,000 square miles, or a medium state's anything under 70,000. That way we get a little bit more useful data inside of here for us to be able to do some analysis. Over here inside Power Pivot, so now we've created the relationship again, just a drag and drop type of user interface inside of here. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say add column. Okay. Inside the column, I'm going to use DAX, and I'm going to write an if statement in here. There's a lot of different DAX commands that we can do, but I'm going to say, oops, actually wrong table here. I want to do this on my land because we want to do small, medium, large states. I'm going to say if the miles column, open parentheses, help, if the miles column is less than 55,000, then we want to classify that as a small state. Okay, so small states are anything where the mileage there is less than 55,000. Then we're going to nest these if statements here. We're going to say if the miles is less than 70,000. Right, basically just a case statement here. So we're going to say medium. Otherwise, this falls into the large category. Okay, so I'm going to double close my parentheses there, click enter, and hopefully this does what I needed to. There we go. We can see the data. So over 70,000 is large, under 70,000 but greater than 55 is medium, and below 55 is small. Okay, I'm going to rename this column up here. I'm just going to double click, we can right click, and we're going to say size. All right. Hop over here into Excel. If I expand my land area here again, or my land area table, notice now I have size. I'm going to remove miles off here and put state on. Oh, excuse me. I'm going to put size on. And there you can see there's my number of sunny days by large, medium, and small states, and the rainfall as well for my small, medium, and large states. It's still not necessarily the most useful information there. So sum of rainfall doesn't necessarily tell us the entire story here. What we really want to see is the average, because there's different number of states inside of these groups here, and you know, we want to make this a little bit more of an even playing field. So we're going to go to our rainfall, and I'm going to create a couple of other calculations just really quickly here, using the auto calculation button up here. And I'm going to hit the drop down there, and I'm going to say average. And since I'm under rainfall column, let's create an average of the rainfall amount. And do the same thing over here for sunny days. And I'm going to create an average number of sunny days. So what we can do then is, instead of looking at the sums, I'm going to come here to my rainfall, and I'm going to say average rainfall days and average sunny days. So we see here that the large states don't actually necessarily get, just because it has more land area, it doesn't necessarily mean it gets more rainfall than some of the small states. So we can see that smaller states, even though they have smaller land mass, actually get the most rainfall. We then drill into this a little bit more, and I'll put the stick down here. And if we take a look at this, it kind of makes sense a little bit. So if we look at some of the large states that we have inside of here, things like California or on the West Coast can get a ton of rainfall. It's very sunny. Then you have things inside of here like your desert states. So we have Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona's in here somewhere, so there's Arizona. So we get a lot of these desert states, so this kind of makes sense. Those are some of the bigger western states out there. So that data actually lines up with what we kind of know of the U.S. If we then look down here, Florida's kind of the outlier here. You know, Florida, we get a lot of rain down in Florida and in the Georgia area there in the southeast. But then you see some of these other medium-sized states kind of in the middle of the country that kind of makes sense. You know, they're some of the rain states, they get some rain, but it's not necessarily some of the rainfall that we get along the coast. And then you come down here to some of the smaller states, and you look at where some of these small states are, again, it kind of makes sense. You know, we've got things like Louisiana inside of here on the Gulf Coast from there, Alabama, you know, look over here, North Carolina, South Carolina are both inside of here. So we get a lot of the south states down on the Gulf Coast, and then a lot of states up on the eastern seaboard as well. And consequently, a lot of those are happen to get hit by hurricanes. So during the summer months, we get a lot of rainy months inside of there. Okay? So some of the data kind of makes sense for us, you know. So we can take that data, we can group these by size of the different states there. Might be useful to go out and bring in, maybe a little bit more useful to go out to the internet or place and bring in you know, regions to say, well, look at all the states in the southeast versus the southwest versus the northeast and northwest. But we can still do some pretty cool little analysis here just in a couple of minutes here. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do, I have just a couple of slides I'm going to zoom through here at the end here and show you, kind of run real quick the last two pieces here. So visualizing data with PowerView and PowerMap. Lots of reporting options. I'm going to sit here and kind of talk through every single one of these. Ultimately, I want to show you what we can do with PowerView and also Power Maps. PowerView was added into Excel 2013. So if you're inside of Excel 2010, you won't have the ability to do PowerView inside of the browser or inside of Excel. You can, however, use SharePoint and get the same functionality inside of your web browser. So we can do PowerView in the web browser as long as you're using SharePoint Enterprise Edition with a couple of other small requirements in there as well. If you guys are curious about some of those requirements or if your environment's set up for it, shoot me an email and I'd be happy to send you over some information on the actual requirements there. Same kind of charting functionality that we get inside of Excel, just a little bit more user interactive, charts, line charts, all that kind of stuff. Again, everything I'm going to show you guys here is all drag and drop. We're not going to write any code. The only code that we're going to write this entire thing was those couple of pieces of DAX that we did just a minute ago. Okay. Also, we have these scatter charts. You'll see down at the bottom right. We can also play back historical data. We can do a little bit of historical animation as well, make those reports kind of interesting. And then Power Map, I'm going to zoom through a quick demo on Power Map just to show you guys some visualizations there. But ultimately, it's 3D visualization environment there. So you kind of look at these two pieces of data, that kind of our pivot table that we've already got versus that map over on the right-hand side. You know, obviously the one on the right-hand side tells a little bit better story visually there than just looking at the results. You can see that the bubbles are a little bit bigger on the Florida versus Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi kind of area there. So we can do some cool visualizations and animate those visualizations inside of Power Maps. Again, 3D mapping functionality there. All you use is Bing Maps in the background, and we can actually export those visualizations we're going to make and share them with other people. Okay, so I know I'm going kind of through some of the last stuff here, but I definitely want to show you guys a couple of these cool pieces of functionality here. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Insert tab, and I'm going to click over here in PowerView. This is all in the Insert tab in 2013. So this is again the same place. It's over here a little bit further. But I'm going to click on PowerView, and this is where things don't crash on me because it's 2016. I'm running a preview of 2016 on here right now, and this does always to work out for me. So what I'm going to do here, though, is I'm going to create ourselves a visualization. I'm going to do sunny days, rainfall, and I'm going to do this by land area. And I'm going to put the states on there as well. Okay, so just a regular table kind of report there, nothing too fancy. A cool thing about PowerView here, though, is I can switch the visualization very easily. So I can come over here and instead of looking at just a table, I can come over here and I can switch this over to a cluster bar chart if I want to. And in just a second there, you'll see it kind of updates that bar chart. The thing I want to show you guys, this is kind of a different visualization than you're probably used to seeing inside the Microsoft tools, is the scatter chart. So if I just go over here to scatter, you'll notice I get all kinds of cool visualizations here for this one. You'll notice I get X values and Y values. So over here on my X-axis, I've got the number of sunny days that appear each year for that particular state. The Y value is the amount of rainfall, so the number of inches of rainfall that I get each year. Each one of these different bubbles represents a different state. And then the size of the bubble represents the size of the state. So obviously Alaska is the largest bubble on here. We can see that it doesn't get, doesn't have a ton of sunny days a year, which makes sense based on what we know about Alaska there. But it does get bits of rainfalls like each year. And probably a combination, take a look at the data, but assume that's probably a combination of rain and snow probably inside of that number there. But if we try to find something like Minnesota or trying to find Washington in here someplace, but you'll notice that Washington actually doesn't have a ton of actual rainfall. I can eventually, it's someplace in here, I promise. Washington State actually doesn't have a ton of rainfall. Washington State, right? So it doesn't have a ton of rainfall. So all your friends and family everybody that live up there in Washington State and say that it doesn't but rains all the time, they're actually lying to you. So just FYI, you can call them out on that time. You can point them to the webinar and you can show them the data that proves that they're liars. On the other hand, they don't have a lot of sunny days either. So it's cloudy in Washington a lot, but it's not necessarily raining heavily all the time. They get a lot of that misty rain. It's kind of annoying, but it's not necessarily hard rain like you would get full inches in an hour, like you get in some of the southeastern states and that kind of stuff. Okay? So little visualizations that we can create right here inside of PowerView. The last thing I'm going to show you guys real quick is going to Power Map in just the last couple of minutes here. This is called 3 maps inside of 2016. If you're into the 2010 or inside the 2015 environment, same location. It's still on the Insert tab here, except for it's called Map, and then it says Launch Power Map here. So just a little bit different naming inside of the 2016 environment. Here it doesn't say Power Map, it says Open 3D Map. So 3D Map in 2016, Power Map in the previous versions there. All right, so I'm going to try to create this visualization in about 4 minutes. We're going to see if this works out or not. Okay. So, layout here is slightly different, but again, the same general options that we have over here on the side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to visualize this first layer here, and we're going to actually make this, we're going to make this a rainfall. So we're going to call this one rain. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the rainfall over here on the height, and I'm going to put the state over here on the location. And what you'll notice is it uses Bing Maps, and it actually goes and it puts all the height of these different bars. If I zoom down or angle down here, you'll see the height of those bars is actually the total rainfall for each one of these different states each year. Okay. So I can come down here. I've got some other options, layer options here. I can change the height of the bars. I can change the thickness. I can pull this down to a thinner bar, or I can make a thicker bar if I want to. So I'm gonna leave this down here around the 85%. I can change the color of the bars if I want to. Blue kind of works with water, so I'll stick with blue there. The next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to click this Add Layer button, and I'm going to do Edit. And this time I'm going to call this one Sunny. Let's call it Sun. Again, I'm going to do the same thing as far as my location goes. I'm going to put the state on there. And then the height this time is going to be the number of sunny days. Okay. What I want to do here, though, is instead of, I'm going to remove that and close this out here. So what we can do here, instead of doing a bar for this one, we can click on this visualization and change this over to a heat map. And you'll notice as we make some modifications here, we can tell it that we want the radius to be a little bit wider so that we can see the influence a little bit more based on, so it shows underneath these to these bars a little bit more. We can increase the color scale so we can see the heat variances a little bit better. So we see, obviously, if we come here to Alaska, you can see no red inside of here, so it's very, very few sunny days versus something down here in some of the southwestern states of the country where we have a lot of sunny days. So the larger heat signature there on each one of these different apps here. Okay, so we can keep adding layers on here if we wanted. Just for time's sake, I'm gonna leave with just those two. So we could put other bars on top of here and make one of them a thick bar, one of them a thin bar. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how we can actually animate this. So with this first scene here, I'm going to click the little copy button down here on the bottom, and I'm actually going to move my map up here to the northeast kind of area. And I've got some options I can change inside of here. So I'm going to switch these over to 5 seconds, and I'm actually going to fly over. So what this is going to do as I make changes to these options here is they're actually going to animate. So I'm going to do a push in on the southeast over here. Okay. And then do one more. I'm going to copy this and go over here to the northwest. And I'm going to switch this one to a circle. All right, so what I've done is I've put a couple of little animations on here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the little play tour up here at the top. And this is actually going to animate. So I did the little push-in animation for this one. So it's going to go push in on the southeast. It's going to go up to that little scene that I made up here in the northeast. And you know that I did flyover for that one. So you can see it kind of animating over top of that. I did these for 5 seconds just so we don't take up too much time here. And then this last one, I'll hold the circle. So it's going to go to the northwest and do a little bit of a rotate around there. So we can export all these. We can do all kinds of stuff. We can export them as high as 1080p video and share those out across the organization as well there. So that's all we have time for. I know I went a little bit over there. If you guys have any questions about Power Query, Power Map, review, any of that stuff, feel free to shoot me an email. I know there's always a bunch of questions. Liz will give me those, and I'll put those into a blog at some point here in the next year and a half, and actually post that online for you guys. But we do have a bunch of other webinars out there, all of our free webinars. So if you are interested in a little bit more detail on any one of those subject areas, free to go out there and check out some of those other webinars that go a little bit deeper into Power Map, Query, all that kind of stuff there. So Liz, I will hand it back over to you.
All right. As Brad said, I will get him the questions that are in the questions panel, and he will answer those for you guys. And as always, the session has been recorded, so we will post it on our website, usually up there by the end of the week. If you have any other questions in the meantime, you can see Brad's contact information up there, or you can also email me, Liz. It's the email that comes directly with your GoToWebinar information. Thanks, guys. Again, sorry about the sound issues. Unfortunately, that does sometimes happen when consultants are on site with customers. You know, we try and do our best. But thanks, guys, and we'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks, everybody.